This is the youngest picture that I could find of myself. I think I'm two. I don't have any baby pictures because actually our start in life was pretty hard. My mother had run away from our father with me 6 months old and my three older sisters, the eldest being 6 years old. We were initially in temporary housing. I think we probably just didn't have a camera back then. We lived in a refuge in Peckham when I was 6 months old to 2 years old. And this would have been around 1973 to 1974. Next slide. Is there a next slide? Our longer term housing, lived in until I was 18, was a council estate built in Peckham, southeast London in the late 70s. That's me circled in black. A street party for Princess Diana and Charles getting married. And I find this picture a little bit painful to look at because it just reminds me of how much we tried to fit in with people on our estate that were essentially racist. Peckham in the 70s and 80s was really rough. Unemployment was high. The far right was very active, as it is now. And Paki was just a really common word that that was shouted to me every time I left the house. In fact, I can remember always feeling tense when I did have to leave the house because it was just such a common experience for me. Cut to secondary school, it got no better. In fact, I spent most of my lunchtimes, if not all of them, for the first 2 years in the toilets just to avoid the racist abuse. And school was tougher than Peckham because it was Bermondsey, which was like a real hotbed of National Front activity. I became very subdued, very quiet. I felt it was probably safer to be invisible than to actually have a voice. I didn't want to be noticed. Further education in the early 90s was different. I went to King's Cross, Kingsway College for Further Education. And it was the first time I was in an education environment where I didn't hear the word Paki and I felt safer. That's obviously not a picture of my old FE college, but I just wanted to reflect on the fact there have been so many cuts to further education since I was there back in the early 90s. University, I went to Queen Mary in Westfield. I was one of 3 brown people in my department. So again, I was not quite the person who fit in, but also I wasn't posh. And lots of the people on my degree, even if they were one of the 2 other brown people who were there, had been privately educated. So again, I was pretty quiet. Moving on from there, I went to work in cultural creative organisations where I was continually made to feel like an outsider, appraised really well, but overlooked for promotions. Often was paid, including Channel 4, less than my white peers. So I basically had this career and experience of early living where I never felt that I was as good as anyone else. Finally, towards the end of 2008, I was offered a place on a leadership fellowship programme, which coincided with my mum dying and me having a breakdown and an existential crisis. During that moment, I realised something really, really important. It was that I have always been good enough. And my whole journey of feeling like I wasn't, whether that was at school, on my council estate, in all those different places I went to work, at university, it wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It was a problem of other people. And so at the same time as this realization, it was also the beginning of austerity in the UK. And I felt compelled to do something about it, about something positive for other women like me, those who risked falling through the cracks in silence in one of the most diverse, but also increasingly divided cities in the world. And so You Make It was born, an organisation I run to this day, which I began to run from my kitchen table where I am back now with no funding. To put bread on my table, I had to freelance and do other bits and pieces of work. But I did it. I worked like a dog, really. I did it because I was just sick to my stomach thinking about how other young women from similar backgrounds to me risked falling through the cracks. I used my own life experience to create a first pilot programme that aimed to make women happier. And I wasn't a happy young woman. So this was really important to me that I was able to change it for other people coming up behind me. In fact, I was really happy a few years ago. I got nominated as someone in the Independent Happy List. So someone who doesn't focus on personal wealth, but focuses on making lives better for other people. Post-pilot, over the last 9 years, You Make It's grown its services to respond to ever-changing needs of our users. It runs 6-month-long, back-to-back holistic programmes, and we've worked with hundreds of women, bringing them together from all sorts of walks of life to learn from each other and to feel that they're not on their own. Our programme has included one-to-one mentoring, workshops covering health and wellness as much as, practical skills around setting up a business or, breaking into employment, work placements, one-to-one therapy, pastoral care, and importantly, at the very end, a beautiful graduation event where women speak loudly and proudly with confidence about who they are and what they want from life. The impact of our work has been phenomenal because we really approach everything with our users at heart. There's one of our alumni, Honesty, who is cool. She's not wearing those glasses because she's cool. It's because she's got an actual health condition. 80% of our women are now in paid employment or do work on their own creative startup businesses. A beautiful thing about our work is that we bring women who live in relative isolation and feel really alone in their struggles as women of colour, but also women of colour who are working class, who, you know, they don't feel there are other people like them. They're not able to exchange and share what it is to be a person of colour and on their journey in life. So it's really wonderful that we're able to connect all of those people together. But also what I think is really important is that we bring lots of professionals who've made it in life together to work with those women. And I think the learning process is not one way. It's not just a mentee who learns, it's a mentor as well. It's not just someone who sits in a workshop, it's someone who delivers a workshop who learns about other people and how life can be if you're not born entirely into luck. So there's COVID. Where we are now is that I'm back at my kitchen table. We've had to give up our co-working space. We're all working in our different home environments, and we're now trying to redefine and redeliver how we support women who are already feeling alone. We've taken what would normally be a sort of very intimate face-to-face in the same space program, and we're now refining it to offer more online services, which include mentoring and therapy and group workshops. But it's obviously just early days, and we need to test out whether our approach actually works. I'm pretty confident that it will. Thank you.